Sometimes science gets things wrong, big wrong. Sometimes it is an honest mistake. But sometimes it is something much worse. It is a deliberate trick, a lie, a hoax. And when we talk about hoaxes in science, one name often comes up. That name is Piltdown Man. This was a fossil discovery in England. It was supposed to be a crucial link in human evolution. It was celebrated, it was studied, it shaped ideas for decades. But then it was exposed as a complete fake of a fraud. This makes us ask a big question. Was Piltdown Man the greatest hoax in science? Not just a big hoax, but the greatest one? That is a bold claim. We need to look at what happened. We need to see its impact, and we need to compare it to other scientific deceptions. Let us go back to 1912. That is when the story really begins. An amateur archaeologist named Charles Dawson made a big announcement. He said he found something amazing. He found skull fragments and a jawbone in a gravel pit. The place was Piltdown, Sussex, England. He showed these bones to Arthur Smith Woodward. Woodward was a respected paleontologist. He worked at the British Museum. Woodward examined the bones. He put them together. He saw a human-like skull. It was thick, it looked old, but the jawbone was different. It looked like an ape's jaw, but it had teeth that seemed human-like. And they looked worn down like human teeth. This was exciting. It seemed to be a perfect missing link. It was an ancestor that had a human brain but an ape's jaw. They called it Eoanthropus dawsoni. That means Dawson's Dawn Man. The timing was important. Scientists then were trying hard to figure out human origins. Evolution was a widely accepted idea, but the details of how humans evolved were unclear. There were big questions. Did the brain grow first, or did the jaw and teeth change first? Neanderthal fossils were known. They had big jaws and smaller brains compared to modern humans. Piltdown Man seemed to say the brain developed first. This fit what many British scientists thought. They liked the idea of a large-brained ancestor. Also, there was national pride. Other countries had found important early human fossils. Germany had the Neanderthals. France had Cro-Magnon. England did not have its own early human. Piltdown Man changed that. It put England at the center of human evolution. It was a big deal for the country. It was celebrated. It made headlines. The Piltdown specimen was unique. It had that big human-like skull, and it had the primitive ape-like jaw. This combination was what made it seem so important. It suggested a path for human evolution, a path where intelligence came before other physical changes. This concept was called the brain-first hypothesis. It pushed other fossil finds to the side. For example, the Tong child was found in South Africa in 1924. It was an Australopithecus. It had a small brain but more human like teeth and jaw. This discovery did not fit the Piltdown model. So many people ignored it or doubted it. They focused on Piltdown, but not everyone was convinced. Some scientists immediately had doubts. Garrett Miller was an American zoologist. He saw the Piltdown jawbone. He said right away it could not belong to the same creature as the skull. He pointed out clear differences. Other critics questioned the wear on the teeth. They said it looked too artificial. It looked like it was filed down. But these doubts were usually dismissed. They were pushed aside by the excitement. They were pushed aside by the authority of people like Woodward. Piltdown Man had a huge impact. It shaped anthropology for over 40 years. It influenced how scientists thought about human evolution. It made them look for more brain-first ancestors. It made them ignore other evidence. Evidence that pointed to a different story, like the Tong child. Piltdown Man gave scientists a comfortable picture of our past. It was an image that put the brain first. It made us feel special. It also created a big problem. It led research down the wrong path. Scientists wasted time. They wasted resources. They tried to find other fossils that fit the Piltdown model. They tried to make other discoveries fit. It warped how they saw the whole field. It was a major stumbling block to understanding our true origins. For decades, Piltdown Man stood. It was a monument to early human history. It was in the British Museum. It was in textbooks, it was taught in universities, then things started to change. Science itself got better. New methods were developed. These methods could look at bones in new ways. In the early 1950s, a team of scientists decided to re-examine Piltdown. Kenneth Oakley was one of them. He was a paleontologist. Joseph Weiner was another. He was an anatomist. And Wilfred LaGrosse Clark was an anatomist too. They used a new technique. It was called fluorine dating. This method looks at how much fluorine bones absorb from the soil. Bones in the same soil for the same time should have similar fluorine levels. The results were shocking. The human-like skull fragments had much more fluorine. This meant they were much older. The ape, like jawbone, had very little fluorine. This meant it was much younger. The jaw and the skull were not from the same time period. They could not belong to the same creature. This was the first major crack in the Piltdown story. Then came the closer look at the bones themselves. Weiner was the one who really noticed it. He saw that the teeth on the jawbone had been filed down. Deliberately. Someone had scraped them. They had reshaped them to look like human teeth. They did this to hide the fact that they were ape teeth. LeGros Clark then confirmed it. He saw clear signs of artificial abrasion. He saw the tool marks, and there was more. The bones were stained. They were treated with a chemical, a potassium dichromate. This made them look old. It gave them that dark, ancient appearance. It made them blend in with the gravel pit. It was a very clever cover-up. It was meticulous. The truth came out in 1953. It was a huge scandal. British science was embarrassed. The whole world was shocked. A major piece of evidence for human evolution was a total fraud. It was a deliberate deception. The fallout was immense. It hurt the reputation of British scientific institutions. It made people question the judgment of respected scientists. People wondered how so many smart people could be fooled for so long. It showed the dangers of confirmation bias. Scientists wanted to believe it. It fit their ideas. So they overlooked the inconsistencies. This hoax also gave fuel to creationists. They used Piltdown Man to argue against evolution. They said, see, evolution is based on lies. Scientists make things up. Even though science corrected the mistake, the damage was done in some people's minds. It was a gift to those who wanted to discredit evolution. The big question then became who did it. Who was the hoaxer? Charles Dawson, the amateur archaeologist who found the bones, is the prime suspect. He had a history of finding interesting artifacts, and some of those later turned out to be fakes too. He was looking for fame, he wanted recognition, and he got it. He had the opportunity. He had the knowledge, and he had a motive. He died in 1916, so he never saw the hoax exposed. But other names have come up. There are theories. One wild theory suggests Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. He lived near Piltdown. He was interested in fossils, and he liked a good mystery, a good puzzle. And some think it could have been an elaborate joke. But there is little real evidence for this. Another strong suspect is Martin A.C. Hinton. He was a curator at the Natural History Museum. He was known for practical jokes. These jokes sometimes involved bones. Years later, a trunk belonging to Hinton was found. Inside were bones stained with potassium dichromate. This was the same chemical used on the Piltdown bones. This was a very suspicious find. Some even wonder about Arthur Smith Woodward himself. Could he have been involved? Most scientists do not think so. He was a respected figure. He had too much to lose. He probably was just genuinely fooled. Perhaps he even participated in some of the early cover-ups, not knowing it was a hoax, but simply protecting the integrity of the find as he understood it. The motive for the hoax remains debated. Was it just for fame? Was it for national pride? Was it a prank that went too far? We may never know for sure. But the impact of the hoax is clear. So is Piltdown Man the greatest hoax in science? To answer that, we need to think about what greatest means. Does it mean the most elaborate, the longest lasting, the one with the most significant scientific impact? If we think about duration and impact on a scientific field, Piltdown Man is a very strong contender. It lasted for over 40 years. It misled an entire branch of science. It redirected research. It delayed our understanding of human evolution. Top scientists were fooled. Major institutions were involved. The nature of the subject human origins is profound. It touches on who we are. It changes our understanding of our place in the world. The fraud was also incredibly clever. It was subtle. It was hard to detect with the technology of the time. The bones were altered. They were stained. It took new scientific techniques to reveal the truth. And the perpetrator did not seem to gain huge financial rewards. It was more about ego and recognition. Other hoaxes exist in science. We have had outright fabrication of data. Think of Hwang Woo-suk, the South Korean stem cell researcher. He faked results for cloned human embryos. That was a huge fraud. It had ethical implications. It wasted a lot of money. It misled medical research, but it was discovered much faster. And it was about specific experimental results, not a fundamental piece of human history. There was the Sokal hoax. A physicist named Alan Sokal submitted a fake scholarly paper to a cultural studies journal. He wanted to show that some academic fields were too accepting of nonsense. That was a hoax of a different kind. It was a critique, a social experiment. It did not directly mislead scientific discovery. Some historical figures claimed perpetual motion machines. They often presented these as real, but these were more often cases of self-delusion or trying to trick investors, not necessarily trying to mislead the core scientific community about a fundamental truth. The Piltdown Man stands out because it pretended to be a fossil, a physical piece of evidence. This made it feel tangible and real. It was not just a paper or a claim, it was there, in a museum, and it was in a field where physical evidence is king. Arguments against it being the greenest might say that other frauds caused more direct harm. For example, a medical fraud that led to unsafe treatments would be worse in terms of human suffering. But in terms of intellectual damage, in terms of misleading a major scientific discipline for so long, Piltdown Man is hard to beat. It showed the dangers of confirmation bias. Scientists believed what they wanted to believe. They wanted a large-brained ancestor. They wanted an English ancestor. This desire made them less critical. It made them overlook warning signs. It reminds us that scientists are human. They have biases, they have hopes, and these can sometimes cloud their judgment. The Piltdown story also highlights the self-correcting nature of science. Even though the fraud lasted a long time, science eventually found it out. New methods were developed. Skepticism, which is a core part of science, eventually won. The truth came out. This is an important lesson. Science is not perfect, but it has mechanisms to find mistakes and correct them. Even very big ones. The unmasking of Piltdown Man helped clear the path for a better understanding of human evolution. It allowed scientists to look at other fossils like the Australopithecines from Africa with fresh eyes. These fossils, which had been dismissed, now made much more sense. They showed that our ancestors walked upright before their brains grew significantly. This was a very different story from what Piltdown Man had suggested. It was the correct story. So, when we look back at Piltdown Man, it is hard to deny its special place. It was not just a small mistake, it was a grand deception. It involved physical manipulation of evidence. It fooled some of the smartest people in the world. It distorted scientific progress for decades. It was about our very origins. The story of Piltdown Man is a powerful cautionary tale. It teaches us to be skeptical, it teaches us to question authority, it teaches us to rely on robust evidence and repeated testing. It reminds us that even in science, fraud can happen, but it also shows that eventually truth tends to prevail. Was it the greatest hoax in science? Perhaps greatest is a strong word, but it was certainly one of the most significant. It was the most prolonged and impactful hoax in the field of evolutionary science. It caused massive intellectual damage. It stands as a stark reminder of what can go wrong when human desires and national pride overshadow scientific rigor. And for that reason, Piltdown Man will always hold a unique and infamous place in the history of science. It is a story we should never forget.